All right, so I said that I did made a stream like a few weeks ago saying that I'd started a job, and so now I've already stopped it. And the reason is that it was really too tiring for me, and the reason it was so tiring is because essentially I just tend to get really tired quickly. I've It's been like that for a very long time. I just think that my body is sort of naturally sort of more sensitive to that kind of thing. So I was a waiter, and for a while I was doing okay. I was doing like quite a bit, and then I could just feel it sort of adding on, and I just realized it just wasn't good for me. Um, and so I've quit, and so I'm I don't regret doing that. And so the thing is, of course, I've been since spring of 2020, I haven't been working at all. And so I've been just living off my parents like I had been until before because I just worked 1 year. And I guess, it's sort of, they would like me to get a job because they don't want to pay for me, and they say they sort of also like they're also like worried about me, but they sometimes sort of say that they're only worried about me not being able to find a job if they're no longer like alive, or or able to provide in some way. But the things that they also just don't want to pay for me. Um and so the thing is, I just, I don't have we recognize that some people are just too tired. And so the thing is, I actually had this COVID also. That's when I stopped. Is in the spring of 2020, I got COVID, and that was pretty like it's left me sort of weird since then. And I think, I mean, I believe, and I haven't talked about this actually on stream and anything like that yet. I'd been talking about it before and other sort of things, sort of more anonymously, and also like to my parents and like other relatives and stuff, and a few like acquaintances. I think that's actually a lethal, bizarrely, a lethal consequence of COVID, slowly lethal. I feel like a tire that's been punctured and like the air slowly leaking out. And it was going, and so like it feels like it's sort of like my energy, like um, these sort of more like alternative medicine type people might talk about energy like this. It sort of feels like that. So I think it's that. It feels like if it's somehow like uprooted, like something that was holding this energy in my body is now no longer holding it, and it just slowly like flowing up and out like that. Um, and no longer being like replenished, whereas before, like, it's something, it would get worn out, but then it would get replenished, and now it doesn't get replenished. And so in fact, for instance, when I use my muscles now, I always like um I lose muscle. Like I don't rebuild muscle anymore. Like it's like the more I use it, the more I lose it, it seems. Whereas before it would be like, it would get rebuilt. But that happened really at the beginning and not so much now. So I think, yeah, I mean, and I feel also just like I get less and less energy, and I feel a lot less like, I feel less emotion. I feel less present. Everything's changed. I can feel like, and before the changes were really very stark, and now it's sort of like I lost so much that I kind of feel normal again, but because I'm just no longer able to feel how weird this whole thing is. Um, so I don't know. I think, I still have a fair amount of time ahead of me, but I think it's a like an unstoppable degenerative process that doesn't have any kind of name because it's a very unique thing. It doesn't seem like anyone's ever had this other one. Nobody knows about this happening. And so, um, yeah, I and so obviously, to me at this point, I think I don't really have much time left, like maybe more like 10 years instead of, 50 or something. So, um, I I see this sort of as my retirement. And I feel like, yeah, if you've got some sort of condition like this, you really shouldn't be expected to still have to work, but the things that like people tend to deny that you've got something that, and so it's just really annoying. And nobody gets it, like lots of the doctors, they will even deny that you ever had COVID, even though they know the concept of false negatives, and we know that COVID can have false negatives. Like I got tested for COVID when I had the symptoms of COVID specifically, and it was negative. So the doctor said, well, no, you didn't have COVID, like incredible idiots. I just don't understand how doctors can be such idiots. It's amazing. And um, yeah. Anyway, uh, and obviously this whole extra thing that I've just talked about, that of course they just don't even believe in at all. Um, and and like I talked to my parents about it, they just sort of they just think it's craziness. They thought I was crazy when I was talking about all this stuff happening, and so like you just don't get any sort of understanding. No, like it's just pissing off. So at least my parents are nice enough to accept that I don't work and sort of just allow me to sort of live with them. But so anyway, I thought, okay, I'm going to start working again now, because then the thing is, as I stopped working, then I thought about that was time for me, and it was useful. I wasn't doing nothing, right? It was useful time for me to develop all my ideas about, about the Gorth and about, my policies, and, write my constitution of the universal state, all that, and trying to like achieve success on Twitch for a while. Um, like so all that was pretty useful. And then and then trying to learn languages, but I feel it just winds again my mind up too much, and I just can't do it. So I've done all that, and at that point I felt like then I went traveling to, like I said, to look for a girlfriend, and then that failed too. So having done all that and having kind of finished everything, of like developing all my ideas on those things, I figured, well, I'll start working again, and just go back to a sort of more normal life. But actually, I don't have the energy to do that. Um, so yeah, I'm decided to stop that, and I've also decided just to sort of shut down. Even before, in fact, I was deciding to sort of shut down sort of useless connections. So I've kind of like one thing I did is actually contacted like a few girls I sort of knew, and I thought who might be sort of feasible for, for joining me, like I said, for this Twitch thing. And um, obviously didn't work with any of them. So, obviously it's not very fun to do this. It's sort of embarrassing, and they obviously kind of hold me in contempt for this kind of thing, even if I doesn't even get to the stage of me specifically explaining what I was looking for. So like the thing I don't have friends, right? So I mean I've got Facebook friends supposedly, but I don't actually have friends. So I decided to just get rid of almost all my friends except a few friends that were friends through the family, um like family friends, I guess. Or and so just because that could still be useful, I don't think there any non-family friends for would be useful because I couldn't stay with them. So basically, I kept some people that I could stay with, or who could in some other way actually help me out sort of materially. Um, and also just because I'm still with my family, so it makes sense to be sort of weird to. I mean, then I might see them again through my family, and then they might sort of ask. Then it wouldn't make sense. Then I would be kind of forced to see them, so it wouldn't make sense to sort of cut the like bridges with them. So anyway, um, uh, I got rid of most of my Facebook acquaintances. I got pared down to less than 1/10 of what it was. And I got rid of my WhatsApp thing. So I got basically nobody, and I got a new number, so nobody knows my number. I sort of deleted effectively all my phone contacts. Um, and yeah, I just like this idea of sort of recentering on myself. I feel I should have done that a long time ago. That's a sort of it's a healthy thing to do, actually. It's a sort of a healing process. It's sort of um also like wild animals might go sort of hide somewhere when they're sick, right? It's just to heal. You just sort of center yourself and try to get rid of external stimuli. Um and I've already been doing that, in fact, my whole life to a large extent, by tending to, I mean, in any case, yeah, I wasn't going out to see friends because I couldn't. And I sort of regretted not doing that, but in the end, I mean, I did very much, but in the end, I think it might have actually been better for me not to, because I mean, it would have been good if I'd had good friends. I mean, good not just in the sense that we were close, but actual that were decent people that were healthy for me. But the thing is that most people are weird. They're irrational degenerates, and like they're basically just not friend material. So it might have actually been good for me to just stay, in my house, in my room and stuff. And you know, I think what I've been doing is good. Um, actually, and maybe yeah, it's not clear what I could have done better. Um, and because for a long time I was thinking like maybe I should have done stuff differently, and now I'm thinking actually what it was pretty decent. Um, so yeah, so now um. And so then there's like other reasonings too. It's like other people are much less moral than me, right? They support all sorts of horrible, all sorts of horrible things, horrible policies and stuff. And so, have them work. Decent people like me shouldn't be working. And also, lots of people, other people tend to be just much more motivated to work, have much more energy, and so they suffer less. So also, again, let them work instead of me. And lots of people really want to have money from the work, whereas I don't really care that much. So again, let them work from that perspective. And yeah, so like and also and above all, I just don't think anybody should be coerced to work. I think even regardless of those things, people should be allowed to just live how they want at a modest level of living, and then work should just give you extra money if you want extra money. That should be the only sort of motivation to work, right? People shouldn't be forced to work. Because I believe basically in freedom. I believe in the freedom to have as many choices as you want, as long as it doesn't cost society too much. And so that's a perfect thing. And one of the ways I want to point out why it's okay is that like when you get a job, lots of people earn more than they really deserve, right? Even under my system, where you get this income cap. In lots of cases, people are still going to be overpaid. And well, imagine, for instance, the income cap is, say, 10 times the basic income. Um, well, then, it doesn't seem that unlikely that somebody might be paid more than one times the basic income more than they deserve. Like maybe if you're paid 10 times the basic income, maybe you only actually deserve to be paid 8 times. So that's double the basic income, which means that you actually are freeloading double the basic income, right? You're just getting, from between 8 and 10, that is two, and you're getting that amount without actually doing anything. So in fact, here you've got a person who's working, but who's actually freeloading more than people who aren't working, who just have one times the basic income. And so that's the idea, is that basically you're going to have people who will be freeloading. Might as well just give people much more freedom by allowing people to not work. And the idea being is that there'll still be other people who freeload more than that, so it's not really so like in any case we won't be able to escape the notion of freeloading. It's impossible, because like then you could say everybody earns exactly the same or something. Yeah, but some people are going to work harder than others, so that again you're going to get freeloading, right? That's what happens like in socialist societies. So even if they don't earn exactly the same, they earn the same for the same job, but some people work harder at the same job. So yeah. Um, so that's sort of my justification. And so, in fact, actually yesterday I made another video, and I said I was also stopping Twitch. And why? Because I was sort of pissed off about various policies, things that Twitch had done. And um, and I agree. I don't really like Twitch, but I don't really like any company because all companies do shitty things. And basically, the problem is that if you want to, get anywhere, get anything done, you still have to go through some sort of companies. You'll have to buy stuff from companies, and it's always going to go to some, to the rich assholes, the rich, CEOs and shareholders and whatnot. And so, oh, hello, not anonymous. So I put what job? I was a waiter. Sorry, I have to get the thing. Oh, it doesn't have the chat box. Um, why is the chat box not coming up? Huh, this is weird. My chat box has disappeared. Um, I don't understand. Crap. Um, I'm gonna have to figure out how to change that. Well, never mind. Anyway, I was a waiter. I was a waiter. So anyway, I'm sort of almost done. And yeah, but actually, so yeah, so that's the thing. In any case, but you really, again, you can't boycott companies that you don't like, because then you have to boycott everything, and then you just can't live. So instead, you've got to just accept, and then what you do is through, you accept to, it's a necessary evil, and you say, okay, you're right wing in libertarian economics, libertarian anarchist, so it might be opposite ends, but let's talk how our life is going for you, man. Um, well, I've been sort of talking about that. Yeah, I've stopped because um, well, I'm actually libertarian. Oh, the chat box has moved. Oh, so it's under the, oh, okay, so it's become tiny. And oh yeah, oh no, it hasn't moved. It's just that I expanded my own camera thing. Um, well, I consider myself more of a libertarian than I think that libertarians is actually a misnomer. I call them borfists, which is just a term I've invented because basically libertarians don't actually believe in liberty. They don't believe in freedom, but rather a very specific thing, which is not having the government remove people's freedoms actively in in certain specific instances, but it's not actually about maximizing freedom. It's because in practice, libertarianism very much tolerates a huge lack of freedom and huge limitations of freedoms, either when two people engage in a contract that affects a third party in a certain way, and that's like an externality, and that might remove people's freedoms. For instance, if some big company causes huge amounts of pollution, that will then maybe kill people, and that will hugely remove their freedom. But from a libertarian perspective, it doesn't matter because the people who were engaging in that, basically the company and its clients, they don't care that, so it was voluntary, and so that is a way that libertarianism completely fails in actually being libertarian. You just said you hated the rich. I doubt you're libertarian. I am, because the rich aren't. Again, loving having rich people is not a libertarian policy. I believe in giving people freedom. See, if you think it is, if you tax rich people more, you're gonna basically be able to redistribute that money to poorer people who will proportionally benefit from it more, and therefore you'll more increase the freedom overall. You'll actually more maximize total freedom. You see, I don't so much hate rich individuals per se. I I hate a system that allows people to massively freeload. But I'm fine with a bit of freeloading. I think instead we should provide a basic income to everyone, and that way everybody freeloads the same, and that way everybody has the freedom, much more freedom, to just live however they want, which means like you don't have to work anymore. Whereas in a supposedly libertarian society, you're actually not at all free because you're actually subjected to forced labor. Because if you don't work, then you've got nothing, and you'll basically starve. So actually, my system provides a lot more freedom to people. In that sense, I'm a libertarian. And again, the so-called libertarians are actually something else. They just believe in the specific thing, um, which is I'm calling Borf. And so I'm calling because it just yeah, because otherwise it just takes too long to say what it actually is because it's a very specific kind of thing. So I decided to just invent a word. It's Borf, and I call them Borfists. And to me, it's a specific sort of weird thing that's not actually useful in the same way that socialists want, supposedly the workers to control the means of production, which actually amounts to the government controlling all the means of production. And again, it's not an actual useful thing. It's not something that benefits people particularly. Um, so that's yeah. I'm an actual libertarian in the etymological sense, among other things. I just call myself Ellist after this L, which is based off of Elliot, which is my middle name, and that's sort of my whole policy. But among the things that my policy is actually more libertarian than any other like major than any major extant ideology. So sorry, I see you've written a few other comments. You say you're not anti-government. Government should be strong, but only to protect rights. Uh, I think government should just do as much as is useful, which is mostly indeed to, I guess, to protect rights. But like, I think the government should be mostly democratic, but with like a constitution, so that you have, um, yeah, you'd have people. I mean, the government should be an instrument that is by and for the people, which it supposedly is in many places, but actually really isn't. Um, And so, yeah, that is sort of my position. I say pollution is externalities. The government should regulate that. It harms others. Okay, so good. So I'm glad you agree on that. I know that some people tend to not actually. I mean, some people who call themselves libertarians tend to not like basically acknowledge the concept of externalities. So I'm glad that you recognize that. You say taxing violates property rights, which is anti-freedom. No, it isn't, because so this is kind of the gets to the crux of my ideology, is that the whole reason you have a property right in the first place is because people decide to, have a society which recognizes these rights. The whole reason you can get money in the first place is because people first decided to create a government that would allow a market economy to flourish, right? So basically, you only get something because people agreed, but maybe we shouldn't agree. And that's what I'm saying. Actually, we shouldn't. And why shouldn't we agree? Because the market, it's great at pricing goods, but it's not great at rewarding people, the producer, right? So it's good from the perspective of a consumer who wants to get an item for the right price. On the other hand, what it's not good for is rewarding the producers, because what happens is that some producers will get overpaid and some people will get underpaid with respect to what they actually deserve to get paid. Um, Namely, the quantity and quality of the work that they actually do. Um, and which is why, and as I've said, we should have both a basic income to ensure that everybody actually has a decent minimum, and an income cap to ensure that nobody earns more than one could possibly deserve to earn through one's labor. Um, so that is essentially what my thing Ellism is about, right? You have a typical market economy, but with these extra, these limitations in personal income, and that's personal income I'm talking about, and not corporate income. So corporate income, again, corporations are useful. So you don't have any limitation like that on corporations. I don't think that having big corporations is a problem in and of itself. The only problem is that then, people who have individual persons, humans who have like power through their corporations, then will do bad things through them. But again, it's sort of like, like the so-called, guns don't kill people, it's people that kill people. Or likewise for corporations. I think, it's not corporations that hurt people, it's the people in charge of the corporations that hurt people. Um, so you say you don't have a freedom to another goods or services, but that's the thing. You say it's another's goods or services. Um, you have the freedom from physical coercion. Yeah, but that's according to your ideology, which is Borfism. I believe in the freedom of just giving people more freedom, and especially that people should be rewarded more equally. Saying you're owed a good or service puts a duty on others and violates rights. It violates rights according to your ideology, which is Borfism. It doesn't violate rights according to Ellism, which is a much more libertarian ideology. Um, so that's the perspective, and that actually is, it's useful actually that we've talked about this, because that actually fits well with what I was talking about, and it actually explains quite well why I'm perfectly okay with not working, and I'm perfectly okay with like subsisting off of taxes. So that brings me to the other thing that I've been saying is, that I was going to say rather, that I'm gonna try to get benefits of, work, incapacity benefits, and yeah, it's going to come from taxes from other people, but it doesn't matter precisely because lots of people are earning more than they deserve. That is to say, they earn more than what is required to motivate them to do a particular job. And to me, that's really what determines what the fair salary is, right? It's how much money would you have to give people so that that person would be motivated to do the job if that person also had the choice of a basic income, right? Um, and so basically, anytime that you have a sort of a niche thing, either basically a job that requires uh, very sort of a limited skill, or a limited, or a sort of rare amount of intelligence or knowledge or something, then that typically is going to require you to be, it's not going to require, it's going to make you be overpaid, because companies are going to have to charge more to be able to convince you to work for them instead of for another company. Basically, what happens at that point is that you become a sort of a rare good, and the price is not determined anymore by the cost of production, but rather, which in this case would be compensation for labor, but rather by a limitation of supply, right? So it's by the laws of supply and demand. And so basically, the thing is, I don't think people should be paid according to supply and demand. They should only be paid according to labor, like just motivation to work. But of course, the problem is that it's impossible to actually fully do that. So instead, you simply implement an income cap that ensures that nobody will earn more than anyone could feasibly, conceivably earn from merely labor. Um, and the thing is, of course, it's not really clear how how much that actually is. So now I've actually changed my constitution to sort of broaden the bracket. Initially, I had only a single level of income cap, which was a multiple of the basic income. And the reason I had just one level is because um, I figured that, the more rich people would be able to manipulate public opinion so that in the end would just reach the top level anyway. So for instance, if you had an income cap between, say, you know, 10 and 20 times the basic income, then it would always end up at 20 because the richer people would manipulate public opinion so that people would vote to put it at 20. But I thought about it again and I realized that actually people don't really listen to to such people if they don't want to. Um, so I've realized I think people can be, independent minded enough to not succumb to that. So in the end, right now, what I've done at least is I've broadened the range. And this is a recent development and one of my latest developments, in fact, for a constitution, is I've broadened the range from 5 to 25 times the basic income. And obviously, 5 times seems very low, but I do think it probably would be enough to motivate people to work, so that most production would still be done. But obviously, since we're not really 100%, sure about that, and it's not really clear if that's the best, well, I've allowed to have a lot more than that, so it's up to 25 times, and I think that yeah, it's probably definitely better to have it higher. But just if people want to experiment, bring it down all the way to 5. I think that's a good way to do it. Like that, and again, each jurisdiction could potentially have a different, you know, limit. But of course, then that could create problems because like then rich people would tend to just move to that other jurisdiction. Um, so that could create a sort of money drain. So that might not be, capital drain or whatever. So that could be a problem, and which is why potentially we actually wouldn't want to do that, or um, maybe just limit it to different planets when different planets are actually inhabited. Um, and so or maybe just maybe you say consenting adults in a free marketplace can agree to whatever the fuck wages they want, and you not dictate your values of fairness on them if they disagree? Well, again, it's not just up to the consenting adults or not, you see, because it affects other people. What you're doing is, again, it causes an externality on people. And see, you're basically, by allowing some people to gain huge amounts of money, you're you're basically robbing other people of potential money, right? You allow, people like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos to accumulate all that money. That is wealth that actually should be redistributed to other people. And so you're actually robbing other people of the money that they deserve to have. Oh, thank you for following. See, that's the conception under Ellism, is that uh, you again, it's not inherently theirs. The money that you make on the market is not inherently yours, and it's not rightly yours. Okay, the only money that is rightly yours is the money that it takes to motivate you to do your job. That is, see, so it's really, the conception is very different. And so yeah, so you're saying according to what you call libertarianism, which I call Borfism. So you're just saying that, but the problem is that you see the Borfists tend to say it as if it was a sort of a fact, like a fact of reality, like the fact that the Earth has one moon, or something like 1 plus 1 equals 2, like it's just like an actual real existing fact, the like and that's not true. Okay, libertarianism is an ideology, and I called it libertarianism. I shouldn't, again, because it's Borfism, because it's not about freedom. Again, I'm more libertarian than supposed libertarians. Um, and Ellism is another ideology, and of course I consider it a superior ideology. And I think you can, in fact, state that some ideologies are. So then I sort of do agree in a sense that to some degree, you can sort of say that it is a fact that certain ideologies are better than others, are more moral than others. But there is, of course, nonetheless, still always a certain amount of gray zone regarding what is right and what isn't right. Um, but basically, like I think there are a few like fundamental values, in particular, sort of wanting to maximize enjoyment, minimize suffering, but at the same time without, but also like satisfying people's preferences, and also not lying to people. and and having people be moral and rewarding people who themselves are more moral, more ethical. Um, and so I guess, and then of course, fairness. So between people, you increase, you want to maximize the fairness of whatever values they want, fairness of satisfaction of their enjoyment, satisfaction of their preference, all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty clear that Ellism basically satisfies those values better than Borfism or socialism or liberalism or whatnot. And that's why I've developed Ellism, right? Ellism is just essentially, it was conceived as just the way to best satisfy, um, you know, the ethical values, essentially. That's the idea. Um, you say one can't be robbed of potential money, not how it works. Well, yes, you can. And again, you're saying it as if it's a fact. It's not a fact. Okay, you can only be robbed of money you objectively currently have. Yes, except okay, but you have it, but you might not actually be considered to own it, right? The only reason you are considered to own it is because we as a society collectively agree to say that the money you have made, that you have obtained on the market, is actually legally yours. But we don't have to do that, right? We could say that the money that you've obtained on the market is not legally yours, and that is actually what I'm proposing, is that the money that you obtain on the market is not legally yours until it's been taxed, and it's only yours post-tax, after tax, your disposable income, and then legally yours. But until then, you're just holding on to it. You see, that's the conception. That is how the law works. That is how morality works. That is how it works under Ellism, which is a superior ideology because it better satisfies ethical principles. So you say Ellism seems like socialism, of course, but to Borfis, pretty much anything might seem like socialism, but it's not socialism, right? Because socialism involves like the government taking care of production, and it's not that. Um, you say again, yeah, but you're repeating this, but again, you're remaining stubborn in your sort of refusal. I mean, I've seen the rest of the previous long comment. You're This is sort of what I see every time, is that you're sort of people refuse to concede that there can be another way of conceiving it, right? And they refuse to understand that it's something is not necessarily just rightfully like yours as if it were a law of physics just because you obtained it, you see. It's only, again, something is only yours because we've decided, or the powerful people who've created society and who've created the laws have decided that that's how it is, but it doesn't have to be. And in fact, it would be better if it were according to my thing. You say no, it's because you have an inalienable right to pursue happiness. Yes, well, again, I don't believe in inalienable rights. Again, that's sort of a weird way of conceiving things. I believe in maximizing people's enjoyment and fairness of distribution of enjoyment. And Ellism does that much better, you say. Um, and this includes the money you've earned, therefore, government has a moral duty to protect this right. Yeah, but again, you can pursue, like, you actually enable much more happiness and much more fairness of happiness with Ellism. You say Ellism is social democracy. Yeah, it's kind of it's like social democracy, but social democracy in many ways is quite, the typical types of societies that are known as social democracy are different because, in any case, social democracy is just basically, liberalism with some amount of government intervention and some amount of redistribution, right? So yes, it's a form of social democracy. It's a form of liberalism, but with a much more limited range of possible personal income, right? Nobody is poor and nobody is rich. Everybody is sort of middling in terms of income, although there's still obviously not everybody is earning exactly the same. And that is to ensure much greater fairness in distribution of income, and it's just a much better system overall. Um, that's what Ellism is, and it's much more similar to the way it actually functions is much more similar to now than a socialist society where you've got the government that does everything and that plans everything, and where you've got like forced labor and that is socialism. I don't like socialism at all. Um, but I don't like Borfism either. Like, they're both like flawed systems that basically think that society needs a particular thing that actually it doesn't need and that doesn't benefit people. I see Borfism and socialism as sort of, two extremes, but in the way they sort of resemble each other in that kind of way of thinking that, that is the fundamental value that you need. In one case, it's having the government not interfere with what people earned on a market economy. In the other case is having the government completely take care of all production and dictate everything, right? And both will see that as a sort of, a fundamental fact, in the way that, like, how Marxists, they'll call it, they call it, what is it? Dialectical materialism. And, it's like they call it a science. It's like Marxism is a science. And to them, it's like the one correct way of conceiving things. And then, like, euborphists will do the same thing as well. It's be like it'll be based maybe on, like, maybe Ayn Rand or something, or someone else, or, like various sort of other figures in the, maybe, like, I don't know, like, now there's the people, like, from the Mises Institute or whatever, but, like, even Mises himself wasn't quite as extreme as that. Then you've got, of course, like, even a bit more extreme would be like Murray Rothbard and stuff. Um, but I mean, I'm not super familiar with these figures either, but, like, um, yeah, the point is that, okay, these are just ideologies. They're not like facts. It's not a fact, like, you know, like I've said before, it's not a scientific fact. Okay, it's just an ideology, and one that I on the other hand, like I said, I do believe that to some degree you can say that certain moral, opinions are actually, like, as a fact, better than others. Um, and even though it's a bit wobbly, a bit, it's a bit, it's not completely clear cut like for science. And that's, I think we can state definitely that Ellism is, in fact, it is a fact that Ellism is a morally superior political system and ideology. Um, as I think I've kind of shown and explained. Um, you say, okay, because I'm not a subjectivist, there are objective ways to determine property rights. So that's the only system that'll work. Um, yeah, but I'm not a subjectivist either. Um, like, I'm not really sure exactly what you mean by that. I mean, I recognize that there is, subjectivity, but obviously I think that there's, like, objective fact as well. You say you can pursue however much you earn on a free market. Okay, but that's your subjective opinion, and which I've just explained is actually not the optimal opinion. You say he was about to get off of Twitch and see you streaming. Hey, Stretchy. The people who want to unionize jobs ultimately just want robots to do all the jobs. They could care less about wages and benefits of the workers because the end result is automation. Um, union. I don't really think you want to unionize. No, unionizing is kind of the opposite. Is to ensure that everybody just has, like, good wages and stuff. So you could say that unionizing sometimes would, by raising wages, will force then companies to replace workers with robots, which is a valid point. Um, Now, like, I've talked about this before, not today, but I actually support automating stuff as fast as possible, and that's another reason why basic income is a good thing. And so in the future, we'll just have everybody on basic income, and then we will just have everybody earning exactly the same, because then production will just be made by machines. And so that is what we should be aiming for. They'll be better. That way, everybody will just have, free time, and that is actually the goal. Um, for now, regarding unions, I'm not a fan of unions. Um, basically, in my constitution, I've said that, employers don't have the duty to, they're not obliged to guarantee a minimum wage. They're not obliged to guarantee protections against, dismissal from being fired. So at that point, there wouldn't be any point of having unions, right? Because basically, that's the only purpose of a union, right? Is to kind of ensure that. So basically, you would still be allowed to have unions. I haven't written anything saying that you're not allowed to have unions, but um, basically, the kind of stuff that unions want would not be allowed, and because it's anti-economical and it's not helpful. I'm very much not socialist type. I'm very much not like that. My policy is very right wing in the sense that it's very, much based on private enterprise and market economies. Um, it is, in fact, a right wing ideology, if that's what you call right wing. Of course, right wing can mean lots of things. But I think that's probably the best way of defining right wing. And from that perspective, it is a right wing ideology, but one that is not highly inegalitarian. Um, so you say, anyways, good night. I might be back. All right, bye bye. Not not an anonymous. You say, I suppose automation. You support automation, but I hate the way unions are selling lies to pursue fully automation. Why can't we have an honest automation pursuit? How do you think they? What do you mean they're selling lies though? Um, what do you mean by why are they selling lies to pursue automation? I don't think unions are aiming for that. I think unions typically aim to fight against automations so as to ensure that people still have their jobs, right? That's the sort of, and that's precisely one of the anti-economical effect of unions, right? Precisely with basic income, we could stop worrying about people losing their jobs. Um, so, um, yeah. Anyway, is there anything else that I was gonna say about myself? Yeah, so I'm gonna try to be I'm gonna try to just get benefits. I'm in New Zealand, so I'll just try to see if I can get New Zealand non-working benefits, work incapacity benefits, whatever. Um, and uh, yeah, otherwise, um, yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else for me to say. Um, I've kind of covered that. I'm yeah, I've obviously given up on, trying to become very successful as a streamer on my own. I'm sort of hoping for a miracle that somebody that will attract people will be willing to join me. Um, but yeah, so that's why I haven't been streaming so much, right? Is because I can see I'm not gonna get anywhere on my own. Um, and so you say, I think humans need peace on Earth to realize fully automated workforce around the world. Yeah, we do. I mean, that's part of my project, right? I mean, to have peace again, I think it makes sense to get rid of separate competing states, which is why I want to have a single planetary and universal state, which is called the universal state. Um, and that's part of my project. Um, yeah. Um, so yeah, so Yeah, and so like I said, I was actually thinking of quitting Twitch because they sort of piss me off. Like this sort of some of the stuff they've done pisses me off. But I realized that no matter where, like any company, even if you just want to buy food for yourself, whatever food company you're buying your food from, will have done bad stuff. So basically, like you can't live if you boycott companies because they've done bad things. So instead, what you got to do is just accept to use those companies and instead try to change the system, right? You're not going to change stuff by boycotting stuff. You're going to change it by political action that will then allow to change the system and to allow the government, which is controlled by the people, so democratically controlled government, to then, you know, uh, impose regulations on the companies when needed. Which doesn't mean having just the government do everything and have a planned economy or whatnot. Um, so yeah, you say humans can get fully automated if you create civilization on space station. Peace on Earth is impossible, possible in outer space. I disagree with that. I mean, you're going to have the same issue with space stations. If you can't do it on Earth, you're not going to do it on space stations. Um, peace on Earth is not impossible. Um, I mean, there's nothing that it doesn't violate the laws of physics, and there's no reason it can't happen. I mean, in a way, maybe it wouldn't actually happen because again, I've got my whole theory of why it can't. I mean, can't happen, right? Because the Gorth turns people into idiots, and that want to make them essentially turns them into Nazis, right? Into nationalists that want to fight for their tribe and against other tribes, and it's just idiocy. And so it's true because of the Gorth. In that sense, it's not possible, but it's just because of the soul degeneracy caused by the Gorth that this is the case. Um, but prior to the Gorth doing that, that wasn't actually the case. So I mean, it was possible, and it is possible without this interference on behalf of the Gorth. Um, so so in any case, we should aim for it. I mean, because it's ridiculous to just do stuff based on people's idiocy, right? You should Policy should be based on non-idiotic people, and if you have too many idiots, then you just strip them of political rights, and that's what my constitution has done. I've got this sort of special status called governors versus non-governors, and people who are idiots are non-governors, and whereas people who are wise are governors, which means they're allowed to vote and they're allowed to have guns, and the others are not. I say too much history, too much bad blood here. Yeah, except that, like, not even necessarily, because you can forget it. That was the past. It wasn't you, right? It's past members of your tribe. But, like, I personally don't relate with members of my tribe. Like, I don't, like, feel bad blood towards stuff that people did to people of my country, like other countries did to my supposed country. I don't identify with any particular country. I identify with universal state. And so, like, I think that's what you should do. You cultivate this thing where you identify with the universal state, and then you don't care about what one country did to another country because you don't identify with the country you happen to be born in. You only identify with the universal state, and then the only people you'll hate, the only tribe you'll hate, is all the tribes that oppose the universal state. Um, but the thing is that then you don't no longer have that same dynamic because the universal state is universal. So once you've managed to quash all the other tribes, then you do have peace because you just have this one universal state. Um, um, yeah, so in a way, it's a fresh start. So you're fresh start by just having people drop their identification, and we've seen how people can suddenly switch ideologies. How you have these movements that like the actual Nazi German movement. Suddenly, people have this, but of course, this was buying into people's tendency towards nationalism. But we know that people can actually drastically change their ideologies as well. You could say that Nazism wasn't really that much of a drastic change, but for instance, say something like Christianity, right? That was a drastic change. It's a very different type of religion to what people believed in before. Um, for the Jews, it was pretty similar, but like for the people who believed in the old Greco-Roman religion, that was very different, and yet people still suddenly adopted it. So the idea is that you can just have a fresh start, and you can just drop your previous ideologies, and also, like, I might add, after World War II, how the Germans got denazified. Lots of people who were Nazis suddenly just stopped being Nazis, right? Um, you can actually, the same individual. You don't just have to wait for the old people to die. Lots of people can actually change their opinions and suddenly believe in things that would have been completely anathema to their previous beliefs. Um, and that's why I do believe that it is possible to get people to support the universal state. I see what you mean about the space stuff, but I don't think it is actually required. Um, so yeah. Um, so I don't really know at this point what I'm going to be doing. I've got a few little projects and stuff, but overall, I'm just going to be doing the same old kind of thing of just hanging out and just living off of my parents. And I've explained why I think that's okay. You say, bro, talking to you is a workout here. Yeah, yeah. Well, I find it pretty tiring too. I get sort of tense in my throat. Like I get it is tiring for me actually to do this. But it's less tiring than working because at least I'm seated. I'm even semi-reclining. I'm the lower half of my body is even lying down. So yeah. But it's tiring. It's tiring for my throat. I can really feel it in my throat. Um, so yeah. I think I'm gonna, unless you want to talk about something else, I'm gonna maybe stop just to have a sort of pretty concise video that people can watch, not more than an hour. Uh, if you have, like, I don't know, if you've wanted to, like, keep on talking for a particular long time, I could just stop this video and restart it. Just stop the stream and restart it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna just completely stop for tonight. And, yeah, like, you say, yeah, you got nothing else to say. Yeah, I don't really I don't really have anything else to say either. So, all right. Well, so then I'm stopping. So thanks for coming by and for participating. And yep. So I guess see you around sometime. And bye for now.